All right, welcome back. Today we're going to be learning how to evaluate functions using function notation. So the first thing that we have to understand is what's the input and what's the output when we're using function notation. Okay, so the x, if we remember, is what we use to denote our inputs. So this variable inside, or the number that's going to be inside, is considered our input. Then with function notation, f of x is just a fancy way of writing y. So the entire expression, f of x, is considered the output. Okay, so if I ask you to find f of 3, this is really asking what's y when x equals 3. In order for us to determine what y is when x equals 3, we're going to substitute 3 in for the x value. So it'll look like this. F of 3 equals 2 times 3 minus 4. So all we're doing is replacing where there was an x, we're going to replace that with a 3. Okay, and then we evaluate. So we get f of 3 equals 6 minus 4, which gives us 2. So f of 3 equals 2 is our final answer. In example 2, we're going to go through, it's a similar question. Okay, this notation here is asking what's y when x equals negative 4. So we'll do g of negative 4 equals, and then in place of the x, we're going to put a negative 4, and we're going to square, and then minus 1. So g of negative 4 is equal to 16 minus 1. Now that's a positive 16 because we're squaring the negative. It's important that we wrap our number in parentheses when we substitute it in. If you don't wrap it in parentheses, then you oftentimes end up mixing up the signs. And so you would just square the 4 and have a negative out in front. So we want to make sure that we know that we are squaring the quantity negative 4. I'm just going to rewrite this, make it look a little bit better. So negative 4 squared is 16 minus 1, which gives us 15. So g of negative 4 is 15. Okay, then we could reverse this question where we end up giving you the output. So here they tell us f of x is 14. Okay, so they're essentially saying that the y is 14, and they want to know what is x. So I'm going to replace the f of x with the number 14. So I'm going to rewrite this entire expression, but instead of writing this f of x, I write 14. And that equals x plus 9. If I'm trying to find x, then I should be solving for the x value. So how do I get that x alone? I want to minus 9 from both sides. And we get 5 equals x. Let's try that again with example 5, just so we have a second viewing. Okay, here they're telling us g of x is 60. So we're going to replace g of x. Oh, I'm sorry, they said negative 60. G of x gets replaced with negative 60. And then the rest of the equation gets brought down. So negative 60 equals 6x. Again, our goal was to find x. So we want to isolate the x variable. To do that, we'll divide by 6 on both sides. And therefore, x is negative 10. And we're done. So in these problems we were evaluating when we were given equations. In some problems, you're going to be asked to evaluate not in equation form. So we might give you a graph and ask you to evaluate. So it's important that we can read the notation and know exactly what the notation is looking for. So in this example on the back side of your notes, it says, what does f of negative 2 equal 4 mean? And so when I read this, I'm noticing that negative 2 is supposed to be representing my x value. That's my input into the function. And then 4 is my output, so that's representing my y value. So f of negative 2 equals 4 is saying when I put in negative 2, I get out positive 4, or it's the ordered pair negative 2, comma 4. If I look on the graph, I'm going to look for that point negative 2, comma 4, so go to negative 2 and then up 4, and that is in fact a point on the graph. Same thing I can do as far as interpreting the notation f of 0 equals 3. So that's telling us that our input x is 0 and our output y is 3, which gives us the ordered pair 0, comma 3. So if I go over to the graph, I'm going to just check, is 0, comma 3, so 0, comma 3, is that an ordered pair? It sure is. Then what if we want to evaluate f of negative 1? So we want to find out what is y when x equals negative 1, because remember this negative 1 is our input. So let's go to where x is negative 1 and let's trace up along until we get to the graph. And then the question becomes, what is the height of that point, or what is the y value of the point? To me, this looks like it's landing between 3 and 4. So I'm going to say the output is 3.5. So f of negative 1 is 3.5. I can do the same thing for f of 2. Okay, they're telling you x equals 2, and they want to know what's y. They want to know what's the output. So let's go to where x is 2 and then trace it down until we get to the graph. That red point is at an output or a y value of negative 1. You see this is at a height of negative 1 here. And that's it for us evaluating on a graph.